got you. Right.
Good morning.
I'm going to call this meeting of the Sweetwater City Council to order, and I'll ask Ollie Wilburn with Rima Valley to give the invocation this morning, and Councilman McPherson to lead us in the pledge.
Father, thank you this day. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings upon this gathering, for wisdom upon our city council, favor and protection upon our fire and police departments. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, we'll now move to item 4, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of minutes for meeting held on August 13th, 2024. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 5 calls for public input. At this time, anyone is allowed to speak on any matter other than personal matters or under litigation for a length not to exceed 3 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Item 6 will now hear a presentation from Mr. Andrew Friedman of Samco Capital and Mr. Sage Diller with Hibbs and Todd.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good to see everyone.
Morning.
Have a handout there presented to you just to kind of cover this presentation quickly. There's not a lot of slides. I just want to update you on where we have been in the past years on planning for pavement improvements. There on the next slide. So then in 2018, the city contracted EHT to go in and do a pavement evaluation and report. That was a visual inspection, looking at the ride quality, existing utilities, and then develop some preliminary cost estimates. That evaluation covered 15.5 miles of city streets. We were looking at trying to maintain the quality of pavement that was in decent condition, and also restore overall ride and quality and function. We also took into consideration existing utilities and developed the project cost at that time. This is a map of the streets that were evaluated in that report. So then in 2020, we went to phase 2, which we wanted to evaluate what the subsurface conditions were, how thick the existing base material was, so that we could potentially reuse some of that material to help offset some cost. So we did a geotech study, took bores and developed cost estimates and then a priority ranking. Those dots there on the screen show all of the locations where we took pavement cores. And then we developed this table in that past report that showed all of the thicknesses and type of material that was underneath the existing hot mix or pavement. And so majority of the base material is more of a pit run caliche, which is very common. It's not the same quality of material that we typically use on our newer projects now, where it's a more of a TxDOT grade crushed limestone. But this is common back 40, 50, 60 years ago. They used what was locally available, this pit run caliche, and that's what we found in a majority of the streets that we evaluated. So we developed this cost table at that time. These are 2020 costs. As you can see, 15.5 miles of streets. It adds up to a considerable amount of money. And then also to consider, moving forward, usually there's a 3 to 5% construction cost increase every year with materials and labor, and so we wanted to project that going forward, just to keep in mind, the longer down the road these projects take, then that cost just increases somewhat. From that phase 2 evaluation, this was kind of the ranking criteria, the priority ranking of the streets we evaluated, going on a scale there. You can see the different colors and the ones that were recommended there at the top for the first phase. So with that information, the idea was to gather more city information as far as kind of confirming the prioritization of those streets, which ones we would which ones we would attack in the first phase, the second phase, and so on. Also taking into consideration the traffic, we want to we know dollars are limited. We want to attack the streets that get the most traffic, that are in the worst condition. We want to bring those back up to an acceptable level, and then that way that they can be used by in areas of schools, churches, different areas, hospitals, all that area. We want to make sure we're addressing those that are traveled the most, but also having some of the budget available for some of the other off-system roadways. So in that 2020 evaluation, we broke it down with that, with that overall cost, we broke it down into 5 phases, as you can see there, at about $5 million a chunk. And at that time, I know there was discussion, the city was looking at funding opportunities, and that did not come to fruition at that time, which brings us back to where we are today. We're now 4 years later, we still have the same streets that need to be addressed, and we're looking at means of funding these projects. This is a proposed plan to address in 3 phases. Now, it doesn't necessarily address the 15.5 miles that we evaluated in the full report, but this adds up in 3 different phases, $6 million apiece to $18 million. We think when we get into design, there may be some cost-saving measures that we can do where we may be able to stabilize some of that existing base material and offset some of that initial cost, and maybe we can accomplish more surface restoration with the money that is shown here than what we had shown originally. What we had shown originally was a full replacement, and we may be able to utilize either lime treatment or cement stabilization of the base material to make those dollars go farther. So this is what we're kind of proposing at this time for council consideration, city consideration. The next steps in this process would just be for the city to confirm budget, what's doable, what's acceptable. Then we would also go into kind of finalizing which streets will be selected for phase 1. Depending upon the timing, its potential, depending on what funding path you take, we potentially could be in construction this next summer, this next paving season, as quickly as that, or it could be postponed to the next year. Kind of depends on how that plays out. There's also some utilities we need to take into consideration. I've been working with Justin looking at, I know there's been some leaks on some fairly large lines. One not too long ago over by the hospital. We want to make sure those are taken care of before we go in and pave it. And so there's some more money available for some water line repair. Also, I know he's budgeting for some, so we would just go in there in that prioritization of those streets. We would make sure we had the utilities taken care of in conjunction within the planning for the street improvements. So next steps shown there, and then planning, we would be planning for the next phases, B and C, basically in 2-year cycles down the road, 2 to 3 year cycles. Any questions?
So you just go in there and when you're trying to decide about stabilization, just take off the top layer and then just, is it a visual inspection to kind of see?
So what I would like to do, we went in there, we found the thicknesses, we found the quality of the material. I would take samples. I would go back to my geotech lab, back out there, take samples of that material. We would take it back to the geotech lab and run different criteria on mixes of either cement stabilization or lime stabilization to see which combination worked the best with that existing material, and then we would apply that to that whole roadway section. So it would be some laboratory investigation before we
Can you hear me?
Nailed it down.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, we're ready when you are.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Morning, Mr. Vella. Andrew Friedman with Samco Capital Markets, the city's financial advisor. Apologize, I was having some technical difficulties, so I didn't get to hear Sage's full presentation on the streets, but I had worked with Kirsten and David over the last 2 weeks to put together an update, a tax rate impact analysis, and this is something that we have looked at several times in the past, both in relation to the street projects that have been under discussion for some time, but also as we worked through and sold certificates of obligation last year for the fire truck. Tax rate impact analysis, as you may recall, is how we determine what the tax rate, the interest and sinking tax rate portion of the city's rate would need to be in order to support debt of various size, so that you all can ascertain what that impact would be on a homeowner and your desire to proceed with financing. And so with that in mind, I will share my screen so that you all can see this analysis, and hopefully you can see it clearly. What this analysis shows is based on, make it bigger.
Can you, yes, please.
Is that any better?
Yes.
Keep making it bigger. This starts with our fiscal year 2025 for the tax rate and budget that you all are set to adopt. And the existing debt service is the certificates of obligation 2023 for the purchase of that fire truck. So we currently levy roughly 3 cents to repay that acquisition of that fire truck. To the right of that, we then are considering what $6 million in certificates of obligation would cost the city in terms of a tax rate going forward should you proceed. And so to the far right column, you can see that would take the tax rate roughly up to 9.8 cents from the 3.1 cents that you're currently levying. So that's a 6.7 cent tax increase. This is based upon some assumptions, one of which is what your taxable assessed values would be in future years. And so we're assuming that these are going to grow, your values are going to grow at 5% per year for the next couple of years. and then we assume that we're not going to grow thereafter. That's not realistic, of course. We expect that the city's tax base will continue to grow, but this is in an effort to be conservative, so that as you all are considering the financial implication of taking on a project like this, you understand what could be the tax impact. So roughly 6.7 cents. We've estimated interest rates high for the market that we are currently in, because again, don't know when you would proceed with this bond issue if you do, and what the prevailing interest rates would be at that time. So again, trying to be conservative. Certainly, street improvements, we always want to amortize the debt associated with the project in line with the useful life of that. So you can see that we chose to amortize the certificates of obligation issued last year for the fire truck out roughly 12 years. Fire trucks got a shorter useful life than city streets. Those will be in service for at least 20 years. And so most often you will see cities amortizing their certificates of obligation for streets over 20 years. And so that's what we've done here. You can always amortize it over a shorter amount. You can amortize it over a longer term. That would be at you all's discretion, but 20 years is generally the norm. The table that I've included here toward the bottom of the page is what I call a homeowner impact analysis. It looks at what a homeowner, based upon various values of their homes, might expect for that 9.8 cent increase. So that would be on a $200,000 property, $134 a year to support that 6.7 cent tax increase for $6 million worth of certificates of obligation. And so, Mr. Vella, I'm happy to go into more detail if I know that you all are potentially considering these projects. We can talk about, the timing for such an issuance, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you all have relative to the financing itself from start to finish. And you all have issued certificates of obligation many times in the past for, typically it's been utility projects over the years. It starts with you all adopting a notice of intention resolution where you set forth a not to exceed borrowing amount, what you intend to borrow the money for, which in this case would be streets, and then the council meeting that you all would consider adopting and selling the certificates of obligation. There have to be at least 46 days in between the notice of intention resolution and the adoption of an ordinance selling the certificates of obligation. And then 30 days after you all authorize the sale, funds would be delivered. So roughly a 90-day process, start to finish, from if and when you all decide you want to proceed.
Any questions?
Thanks, sir. Thank you, Andrew.
You're very welcome.
Okay, we'll now move to item 7, which is discuss, consider, and act upon a resolution approving the annual rate review mechanism rate increase for Atmos Mid-Tex. Any questions? Do we have a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Did you want to talk? Okay. I'll now read the resolution into the record. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Sweetwater, Texas, approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos City Steering Committee and Atmos Energy Corporation Mid-Tex Division regarding the company's 2024 rate review mechanism filing, declaring existing rates to be unreasonable, adopting tariffs that reflect rate adjustments consistent with the negotiated settlement, finding the rates to be set at an attached settlement tariff to be just and reasonable and in the public interest, approving an attached established benchmark for pensions and retirements, medical benefits, requiring the company to reimburse ACSC's reasonable benchmark expenses, determining the resolution was passed in accordance with the requirements of the Texas Open Meetings Act, adopting a saving clause, declaring an effective date, and requiring delivery of this resolution to the company and the ACSC's legal counsel. We'll now move to item 7, which is to enter into public hearing to discuss the fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget for the City of Sweetwater.
So moved.
Okay. This budget will raise more revenue from public taxes than last year's budget by an amount of $193,704, which is a 6.2% increase from last year's budget. The property tax revenue will be raised from the new property added to the tax roll this year is $27,780. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against this item? Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
Close public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now move to item 7C, which is to enter into public hearing to consider and discuss the proposed tax rate of .506817 per $100 evaluation for tax year 2024.
Make a motion to open public hearing.
This tax rate will raise more taxes for maintenance and operation than last year's tax rate. The tax rate will effectively be raised by 5.72% and will be raised taxes from maintenance and operation on a $100,000 home by approximately $1.50. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against this item? Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll now move to item 7D, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of a resolution of the central rate schedule for the 24-25 budget. Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Consider act upon approval of resolution.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now read the resolution into the record. A resolution confirming and ratifying the central rate schedule for the various fees, license permits, and rate charges of the city of Sweetwater, Texas for the fiscal year 2025 and adopting such central rate schedule. We now move to item 7E, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year end 24-25 budget for the city of Sweetwater. This budget will raise more revenue for property taxes than last year's budget by an amount of $193,704, which is a 6.2% increase from last year's budget. The property tax revenue will be raised from the new property added to the tax roll. This year's $27,780. Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget.
Okay. I now call for a roll call vote. I will state your name and each one will vote for, against, or abstain. Mayor Pro Tem McPherson.
Four.
Councilman Baker.
Four.
Absent. Councilman Boyle.
Four.
And I for. Motion carries and approved. Now read the ordinance into the record. An ordinance approving and adopting a budget for the city of Sweetwater for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 24 and ending September 30th, 2025. We'll now move to item 7F, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of appropriations ordinance for the fiscal year 24-25 for the city of Sweetwater. Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now read the ordinance into the record. An ordinance making appropriation for the support of the city government for the fiscal year 24, October 1st, 24 to ending September 30th, 2025. We will now move to item 7G, which is discuss, consider, and act upon awarding bids for fuel, oil, and lubrication products and hot to cold hot mix coal lay asphalt for fiscal year 24-25. Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we now move to item 7H, which is here a presentation from Misha Adonis and to discuss, consider, and act upon approval of Sweetwater Enterprise for Economic Development Municipal District Budget for fiscal year 24-25. Morning.
Morning.
Good.
So this 2024-2025 fiscal year budget was approved by the CMDD Board of Directors at our August 12th meeting. I'm going to go through it, touch on just a couple of changes that we made as opposed to last year. So one thing to mention is that we set a record year for our sales tax collections. Those of y'all that, just a refresher, CDMDD is funded off of a half-cent sales tax, and so you'll see down there at the bottom, as of, we still have one more month to collect, but we're sitting right at almost 1.5. This chart right here kind of shows our sales tax, our local, those that have a local presence as opposed to those that have a remote presence, such as Amazon and stuff like that. You'll see around November, December, those remote sales tax collections pop up right there. I just kind of thought that was an interesting chart to show. A lot of people don't know that we do collect sales tax for those, orders online and things of that nature. Our designated, our fund balance is sitting pretty healthy, right at $7.2 million. The few obligations that we do have, the larger ones, are paid out over 20 years, the housing and Sutherland sales tax rebates. So we don't anticipate a large drop in our fund balance due to a large current obligation for our incentive agreements. I'm just going to kind of, right here, the market, or let's see here. Advertising and marketing, this item on the budget I wanted to point out to y'all because there was a pretty substantial increase. We are working with Neon Cloud Productions to do a marketing video for the city of Sweetwater. This will, roughly the budgeted item was about $13,000 or so. We still owe about $9,000 on the video. This video will be pushed out to various outlets such as YouTube. We're going to try to see about getting it on ads such as Zillow, those looking for homes. CDMDD really believes that our goal is to increase our population. Currently, our workforce is the lowest it's been since 2020, our unemployment rate. And so in order to sustain our economic growth, we need to continue to try to grow our population, preferably, working class people, which is why we're doing all of our various housing projects, quality of life projects, just trying to make Sweetwater more livable. And so the initiative with this marketing video is to try to get out in front of as many people as we can, in the, West Coast, East Coast, all those various areas that people are looking to move from, and that way they know that Sweetwater, has a low cost of living, has a small town feel, has available housing that's affordable, has jobs that are pretty well paying, and things of that nature. And so that was kind of our goal, and is our goal with our marketing video. We will be debuting this video at our chamber banquet on the 16th. And then there is one other item I wanted to point out right here. The Ballfield planning study that the CMDD Board of Directors has budgeted for. We are working with EHT to look at all of our ball fields, our baseball and softball fields in Newman Park, Jones, and Fraley Parks. We're just kind of getting them to put together some cost estimates. That way we can then go out and search for funding to upgrade these fields. There's various organizations we intend to approach to ask if they're willing to pay for it, but Our intent with this planning study is to have everything that they need to know, what the work would cost. It's going to have it itemized out. And we're even including the Roscoe baseball field just in case the county would like to hopefully, throw in some funding with that as well. And then down there you'll see our total proposed operational expenses is about $447, which is right at 33% of our total revenue from sales tax and interest collected. And that's, the typical right where you want to be is about 30% or so of your revenue collected for that year. We also increased our facade grant improvement budget from $75,000 to $100,000. We spent roughly just over $65,000 this past fiscal year on facade improvement grants. So we went ahead and upped that budget just in case. We don't want to prohibit anyone from improving their facade of their buildings and our corridors in our downtown district. So that's the budget there. Is there any questions specifically about the budget that I can answer?
That program has really made it.
Oh, it has.
A lot better.
It has.
It really has.
It really has.
Any questions? Thank you, Misha. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now move to item 7I, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approving the 24-26 Sweetwater Enterprise for Economic Development and Municipal Development District Program of Work.
So if you'll pull that presentation back up. So per our rules of operation, we're required to present an annual plan of work to the City Council. Normally what we do is we do it 2 years at a time and revisit it each year. If we have any major changes, we bring it back to y'all. This program of work is kind of like our strategic plan for SEED MDD. It has 6 different categories, and I'll just kind of run through those real fast. Each category has a definition. Of course, economic development is our main goal. The retention, expansion, support of our current industries and workforce. Then you have the quality of life initiative, parks, beautification, things of that nature. Beautification also, this is our demolition efforts and our facade improvement grants programs that fits under there. And then we have retail recruitment as one of those. This has really been, we've been hitting this heavy since about 2021, and we're starting to see some fruits of our labor and hopefully continue to see that over the years to come. And then workforce development is one of our pillars that we support very heavily. Without our workforce, we can't recruit companies, and our businesses can't sustain. And then marketing, that's one of the most important things, especially with our video. We do our monthly newsletter. We've recently rebranded our whole organization, new logo and all that, just to, when someone sees our logo, we want them to know, hey, economic development knows those people, and kind of put a friendly face to that name, and get Sweetwater out in front of as many people across the country as we can as an option to live, work, and play. So, are there any questions? And this specific program of work was approved by the MDD Board of Directors at the August 12th meeting.
Make a motion to approve the Economic Development District Program of Work.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried and approved. Now move to item 7J, which is discuss, consider, and act upon an amendment to the Sweetwater Enterprise for Economic Development Municipal Development District 23-24 fiscal year budget.
So this item specifically are, we don't need the program, but the specifically this item, the SEED MDD Board of Directors voted to increase the facade improvement grant amount back in February. We originally budgeted for the fiscal year 2023, 2024, 50,000. In February, they increased that to 75. So since it's the end of the fiscal year, we're just making that a budget amendment with y'all.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried and approved. Now move to item 7K, which is discuss, consider, and act upon appointments of 3 board members to the Sweetwater Enterprise for Economic Development and Industry Development District Board of Directors effective October 1st with terms expiring September 30th, 2026. Okay, I know Carolyn wants to stay, and David's gonna stay, and we need a third.
I think Ginger Payne.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt Ginger Payne.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried and approved. Now move to item 7L, which is discuss, consider, and act upon entering into, by and between political subdivisions of this state, more members to form a joint self-insured pool to be named the Texas Municipal League Joint Cyber Liability and Data Breach Response Self-Insured Fund for the purpose of providing coverage against risks which are inherited in operating a political subdivision.
A little explanation on that. A little.
Identity theft protection for citizens.
What I read is what, like
Employees.
$1,250 a year for us to, through TML.
Yes, we already had the coverage, but now they're doing an interlocal agreement with all the cities, so.
Okay.
I move we approve the expense for the cyber liability.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did you say that? Okay. City manager report.
Yes, sir. Well, it's that time of year again. On Tuesday, October 1st, we'll be celebrating National Night Out. This free event allows residents to connect with first responders who serve to protect our community. The Sweetwater Police Department, Fire Department, and other agencies will show off their fleets, host agility courses, and much, much more. Churches, businesses, and civic organizations can set up booths with free information, games, and food. If your organization would like to set up a booth, contact Kathleen Cox here at City Hall. Item B is the animal shelter is accepting donations. Currently, their needs include dog food, bleach, dish soap, and cat litter boxes. They have an Amazon wish list that can be found on their Facebook page. You can shop their wish list or purchase items and drop them off at the animal shelter or at the Sweetwater Police Department. The next item is the WASP Legacy Ride. The WASP Museum would like to invite everyone to the museum on September 28th to welcome Museum Ambassador Larry Ritland as he completes his 26-day cycling tour from Iowa to Sweetwater in honor of the WASP. Local cyclists are invited to meet Larry in Hamlin the morning of September 28th and cycle the final stretch with him. The Sweetwater Police and Fire Departments will escort the cyclists to the museum. The public is invited to line Broadway and show their support to Larry with a honk rally. Join Larry at the WASP Museum from noon to 2 p.m. for fall games and activities and sliders and hot dogs. Sounds like a lot of fun. Item D is Police Department promotion of Eli Cunningham. Congratulations to Eli Cunningham, who was recently promoted to corporal at the Sweetwater Police Department. And then item E is a letter of appreciation for Victor Garcia, and Chief Barrett will make this presentation.
I'm really excited to present this to Victor Garcia. Victor, you can come forward, please. And just go ahead and read this letter. On behalf of the Sweetwater Fire Department, we would like to take a moment to express our appreciation for your exceptional dedication and commitment to the citizens of Sweetwater and Warren County. On August 25th, while responding to a medical emergency, one of our ambulances suffered a mechanical failure, rendering it out of service. In addition to the other ambulance that was already being repaired for brake issues, Victor came in on contributed to ensuring the safety and well-being of our community. Your professionalism, outstanding work ethic, and selflessness embody the core values of our organization and demonstrate the excellence we strive to achieve. You truly exemplify the spirit of teamwork and service, and we're fortunate to have you as a part of our team. Thank you once again for going above and beyond. Your efforts make a significant difference, and we greatly appreciate your dedication to our community.
Thank you.
That's it, sir.
Mr. Mayor, that's all I had.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Well, good, one will turn you to do the